Okay, so this is my timeline. So a quick introduction about myself. So I was born in Sri Lanka in 1964. This was another period of economic turmoil here. My father was an engineer, civil engineer. And at the time, Mrs. Bandranaik was having economic problems. She banned the import of steel. So my father, who worked in reinforced concrete, he said he decided to take us all to England for 2 years. I think my mother was 20 years old at the time. And he said, 2 years we'll be back. We'll be back from this freezing cold country back to the warm drivers and cooks and all that kind of stuff. We never came back, or they never came back. So in 1966, we migrated to the UK and I was educated there. Well, I have a brother and a sister. In 1983, I entered university, graduated in 86, and went into the IT industry. So the IT industry was important because it gave me a chance to join a company that was outsourcing software to Sri Lanka. This was during the Y2K bug. A lot of Western companies were outsourcing to places where they could get coding done at a low cost, so mainly India. But I found a place that was coming back to my home country. So in 93, so I was married in Colombo and we had a son. We returned to the UK in 2000. And then in 2015, so 7 years ago, I came back to Jaffna. And I've been based there ever since, and it's my plan to be here. I have no plans of going anywhere else. What I've been doing since I've come here, one of the things is my family has land inherited through my father's family for several generations, close to Jaffna University. So my mother, brother, sister, and I put money together, and we put up this building. And my feeling is that if you have land in the north, a lot of the diaspora own a lot of land around the whole northern province, which is just lying idle. So you see fields doing nothing, you see buildings which are abandoned, even in the center of town. I'm right near Jaffna University. There's a building opposite me and a building next to me that have been abandoned. You wander around Jaffna, there's no shortage of places like that. My feeling is that if you own an asset like that, you should either do something with it or get rid of it. So that means give it away or sell it. But don't just leave it there being idle. So we put up this building. And in terms of investments, putting up a building in Jaffna is not actually a great idea because the return in terms of rents and the like are much lower. The cost of putting up a building in Jaffna is the same as in Colombo, except, of course, the cost of the land. But the financial return you get is far less than Jaffna. Other things I've been doing is, for my first 3 years here, my father was at St. John's College. My mother was at Bermondsey. At St. John's, I ran an English language debating society for about 3 years. I'm not doing that anymore. And one reason is that debating isn't only about talking, it's also about listening. And that's one thing that we in Sri Lanka are very bad at doing, listening to what the other people are doing and processing that in a logical way. I've been supporting entrepreneurs from small startups to very successful entrepreneurs who are exporting around the world. So one company is exporting Palmyra products and spices and other foods and drinks from the north. Another one is exporting cocoa peat. So this is from the dust of the coconut husk, exporting it to the United States. He brought in a large investment from the States, not from Sri Lankans, but from foreigners in the States. I've been involved in some tourism initiatives, so trying to promote projects, for instance, water sports in the north. I've been on some governor and Northern Provincial Council committees And I write. So many people know me from the articles that I write about the northern economy. I don't ever do anything about politics. I don't get involved with politics at all. Now, everybody knows it. I'm not going to spend much on this. Everybody knows the North is poor and it needs investment. So these figures from 2018, Northern Province has the smallest share of GDP, and the Northern Province, in terms of GDP per person, is the second lowest. So even though we're now 12 years, the figures haven't changed much. Even now, 12 years after the end of the war, we haven't recovered, despite all our unique advantages, which are mainly among the diaspora. Very powerful, very wealthy, well-connected group. But still, we haven't achieved a great deal. The other way we see that is the Northern Province is the only province where the population has actually fallen. Every other province has grown somewhat, but these figures from 2011 to 2019 show that. And again, this is after the war. The population here, people are leaving. People are leaving because there's no opportunity here. And since I've been here now 7 years, and I've become somewhat known, particularly through these articles I write, I often get questions from people who want to do something to help the North. And these are actual quotes of emails that I've received. So someone in Norway has allocated $10,000. Do I have any ideas about what you could do with it? An accountant in the UK is looking for investments, particularly in export operations. Do I know of anything? There is a gentleman who said that he would come here and train our, in his words, educate our intelligent students. But he doesn't give any more information. And as I say, there are a lot of diaspora who own assets in the North. Many of them have inherited them. Some of them have never seen them in their life. But commendably, they don't want them to just lie there doing nothing. So they're looking to partner with a farmer, partner with somebody to use those assets. But actually, I don't provide advice to these inquiries because they're too vague. And what I do is I ask the person to provide a brief outline of what they're actually trying to achieve. And hardly ever do I get any further information. Because poorly thought out investment is going to result in disappointment. Because if you don't know what you want, you won't know when you get it. And there is a light. So, got my candle. Everything is switching back on. How do you measure success? If you can't measure how successful, if you wanted to increase the turnover, increase the income, you need to understand what your objective is, how you're going to measure that. Because it's only by anyone who's run projects. I used to be a project manager in an IT company. If you don't have some metric, you don't know whether things are going right or wrong, and you can't adjust what you're doing to improve things. Is it achievable in the first place? Many of these things that people are aiming for, they can't be achieved, and also they can't be measured. So many initiatives, I won't mention them. The person will always be disappointed because he doesn't know that he could never have had success for that particular object. And the reason, one of the main reasons why all of these poorly thought out investments are a bad thing is it very often involves the person who's, out of the goodness of their heart, tried to run this investment. They'll bad mouth the North. They will say that the people here are lazy, or the young people are riding around on their bicycles and their motorcycles funded by diaspora remittances. They'll come think of a whole load of reasons why their projects didn't succeed. But actually, normally the reason is it wasn't thought through properly. And one thing that is very important is that you need to understand who you're working with. The people here are not like the Tamils outside. What I have observed since coming back is, having lived in London for a large part of my life, and having watched the success of the Tamil diaspora around the world, and also having watched the hugely disappointing performance of the Tamils in Sri Lanka, I realized that there is something going on with the people here. If you're, as I've done, I put up a building, I've done various other projects. Yeah, so I've run various projects. One thing is that they don't like to say no, for example. I'm sure, I know that many of you will have also run projects. So if you ask them, can you do this? They will say yes. They won't say no to almost anything. They'll promise to do things that they can't do. They'll say, I will be there in 10 minutes, and they won't be there. What I find is that when they're working, they look for problems. They look for reasons to stop, rather than looking for reasons to get around the problem. And they won't tell you when things are going wrong. If something's going wrong, then they'll grind to a halt, and they'll sit there doing nothing until you go and find out and get them started again. But when you're engaging in projects with the people here, you need to understand that they don't operate like the people that you know around the world. And whatever the reason for that is, whether it's having gone through the war or whatever the reason for it is, doesn't matter. To succeed in an investment project here, you need to understand how all that works. So when I say that the projects are very often poorly thought through, I'm just going to go through some of the questions that I think that you should be asking when you're constructing a project. So the first one is, why do you want to invest in the first place? Some people want to make a charitable donation, and they don't really mind. The objective is to make the donation of $1,000. What happens with it afterwards is not something that they're very concerned with. Sometimes they want to create a memorial for a loved one. One organization that builds well, and the name of the loved one is put on the wells. And that is a very worthwhile thing to do, because if you put a well in a piece of land in the Vani, it'll make a huge difference to the family who's trying to make a living farming. I've been involved with an organization like that, and I've seen the difference it makes. There are some people who are exporters. They'll invest, again, I know people like this, they'll invest in the cooperative. This is someone who's working with cooperative societies, Amara sector. He'll invest in the cooperative so that they can improve the quality and the quantity of their production. Sometimes someone just wants to own an asset. They'd like to buy a piece of land in their ancestral land, but they don't want it to just lie there being useless. So they'll buy the land and make it productive by partnering with someone. Or they'll have a higher level objective, which is overall build northern capacity, build the northern economy. Or maybe they want to find a northern business that they can invest in and become shareholders and wait for capital gains and wait for dividends. But you need to know why you want to invest. You need to think about how you want to invest. Some people will make a donation, so they'll give 100,000 rupees, and then they'll forget about it. And there's nothing wrong with that. some people make loans, low interest loans, because getting loans in this country is very difficult for the small operators. If they go to a bank, the bank will ask 100 questions. It'll ask for guarantors. If it's a government bank, ask for guarantors. Private bank, it'll ask for collateral. They'll want to know that you own some land, which you can promise based on this loan. Otherwise, you won't get the loan. Another way, as I said earlier, is you can buy an asset. So a taxi driver, who I use very often, at one stage he asked me, can I buy a car? So the taxis in Japan are all these small nano type cars. And he'll run it. He'll pick me up, give me a lift whenever I want it. But he'll run it. And this guy has about 3 or 4 taxis. So he'd use it for his business. You can make equity investments. Either your people I know have made equity investments in some of the software companies, and they're just patiently waiting for these equity investments to start yielding them some dividends. Actually, they really don't mind whether they never do, but they hold shares in these. And there'll be some people who make equity investments with the intention of dividends, making a profit, exiting, making a capital gains. So the way you want to invest needs to be part of your thought process when you start your plan. And when you invest, you need to know what is the success criteria and how you're going to measure it. So if you invest in a factory and you want to increase the employment, then find out what the change in the number of employees is after a year, after 2 years. There are people who donate chicks to rural families, so this is quite common. But you should measure to see what the impact is, whether the income of the family has actually gone up. Funding clean water supplies, or you should measure. So if you're going through the Grama Sevaka, measure whether that has had an impact on water-related diseases. I know a person who runs a small bakery who wanted to improve his oven. You need to see whether it's actually made a difference. You should always measure the outcome of your investment, because that's how you learn the lesson. And that's how you make sure that the next one will be better. Again, very often I see people coming in doing the same thing that previous people have done. And they have learned none of the lessons. They say that they're going to go down the same track that previous people have gone down without improving their plans based on previous experience. These are other people's experience. We don't share our experiences. But you need to know who you want to benefit. So I won't spend much time on this. And where the benefit should lie. So some people want their home village. Some people want young people. Some people want old people. Some people want women. All of this should be coming together in your planning before you start your investment. What sector? And again, what is the focus? So I know projects where they try to introduce drip irrigation, which wasn't actually a great success. Putting in new crops. I visited a place where the guy had replaced about, I think, 1/2 acre of land with grape. And it was amazing. Within 1 year, he had a harvest of grapes. The vines were taller than me, and the bunches of grapes were very large, and that was within 1 year. One investment focus is working capital. A mistake that I've seen made on a number of occasions is an organization will get additional machinery. But when you have additional machinery, that means that you can process more product, which means, for instance, if it's cashew, if you have additional machinery to bake the cashew, that means you have to buy more cashew. The put into the additional machinery. These people don't have the cash to buy the extra cash. So investments can come in many different forms. The key questions you should ask when planning is, why do you want to invest? How do you want to invest, and how much you want to invest? Whether it's 50,000 rupees or 5 million rupees, and whether you want to invest as a loan on easy terms, or whether you want equity, and what's the outcome you want to achieve. And if you've answered those three questions, then everything else will follow. And an important thing is, share the lessons from your mistakes. The way we get better is, as each person tries a project and it goes 50% well, 50% badly, we must share the lesson. The next person will do things better, and their project will go 70% well, 30% badly. To do that, you should have periodic reviews during the project so that you can see when things are going wrong and how to fix them. And you should have a lessons learned review. And hardly ever, I've spoken to various bodies, NGOs, and I've asked them, do you do this lessons review? And they hardly ever do. And I suspect that's because they don't want to know that their project, which may have costed thousands of dollars, didn't achieve its objective. Another thing that I often hear is people are ashamed of profit. Don't be ashamed of profit. Profit is a good thing. When you invest, you should take profit for yourself and share profit with whoever you invested in. What you do with the profit is your business. Whether you want to use it to buy a new car, or whether you're going to reinvest in another project and roll it back into the north, is your business. But don't be ashamed of it. Charity is not sustainable. I've seen an example where an Australian NGO was funding a particular project here, and then they pulled out. Project collapsed straight away. The project has to become profitable because that's how it will survive independently. Charity should move on. If a charity is in the same place forever, then it's not working. There's always need for charity. So it should make the beneficiary independently profitable. The charity can move on. Here, when we're looking at investing in the north, it's not sophisticated stuff. You're not looking at very subtle indicators. What you're looking for is a sustainable business. And the way that I've seen that you can, one good way of providing that route is finding a pre-existing, strong existing sales. I should have taken out one of those existings. So invest where there's a pre-existing, strong sales channel. So an example of this is this. So one example of this is this company that is exporting Palmyra products. It's exporting jaggery and toddy and various spices from the north and arak very successfully. And what that company has done is it's invested in the cooperative societies. It takes no ownership of the cooperative society because it can't. It's not allowed to. But it's invested in improving their machinery. It's advised them in how to improve their work practices. And it's brought their quality up to export quality. Previously, the societies in the north were not providing product which could even compete with product from the south, which meant that some of them were going bust. So I'm talking about the arak cooperative. Arak cooperatives during the war were protected because during the war, arak from the south was not allowed into the north. So the cooperatives here were able to sell. They had no competition. When the war ended, competition started coming in. These cooperatives started getting into trouble and were going bust. So the company I'm thinking of actually entered into an agreement with one of the cooperatives And he said, if you can change your practices in these ways, and I will invest in certain machinery for you, then I will guarantee to buy everything you produce. And that deal that is a deal that is lasting for a number of years. And at the end of those years, the cooperatives will have learned how to do things to international standards, and then they can walk away. They still fully own themselves. They can walk away and they can enter into new deals with another company or even start their own export. So now what I'm going to show you in my last 5 minutes, I may overrun a little bit, is one way of doing this kind of investment. So usually the investors are trying to help small farmers and small producers. And the example I'm going to have here is gingerly oil. So this is something we're famous for, the Arnacote gingerly oil. And we're so famous that in South India, they make counterfeit Arnacote gingerly oil. They make gingerly oil and they put Arnacote on it because the brand name is so good. One thing companies don't like is to have a large number of small investors. So a company, unless a company is desperate, when a company is desperate, it'll take money from anybody. But if there's a strong company, it doesn't want $1,000 from 100 people because it's going to get 100 questions from every one of those people all the time. It prefers to have a single large investor or one or two large investors. So in this example, what I was talking about was find an existing strong sales channel. So if we have here a gingerly oil merchant who is already selling successfully to the national and international market. The investment fund invests in the gingerly oil merchant, not for the gingerly oil merchant to use the funds itself, but for the merchant to invest in its suppliers, in its supply chain. So it might invest in the farmer, where they grow the sesame seed very often in the paddy field. In the north, we only have one paddy season. So in the second season, you go past the paddy fields and you see a lot of vegetables growing there and a lot of sesame seed growing there. So the gingerly oil merchant can invest in the farmers. The gingerly oil merchant can invest in the pressers who are making the oil to increase their production. The gingerly oil merchant is doing this for a purely commercial, selfish reason, which is the sort of reason that means that it will do it properly. Because by increasing the volumes of gingerly oil that it gets from its producers, it can sell more and make more profit. So the gingerly oil merchant invests in the farmer, gets more seed, makes payment to the farmer. The farmer gets more income because he's growing more seed. Gingerly oil merchant invests in the oil presser. He sends the seed from the farmer. The oil presser can press more oil, can press it to a better quality, sends it back to the gingerly oil merchant. Because he's producing more and better oil, he gets a larger payment. The gingerly oil merchant then sells it into the market, larger volumes, better quality, and then he pays the investment fund a dividend. And the investment fund will pay the donors and investors a dividend. One problem with putting money directly into farmers is it's impossible when you have hundreds of farmers to monitor what their performance is, or even monitor whether they're using it for what the money was given for. But these small farmers, small producers have a lot of headache. They have existing debts. They may need a motorcycle or something. So when they get funds, they will often use those funds for the most immediate problem that they have. If you're investing directly into hundreds of farmers, you will never have the capacity to go and watch what they're doing. But if the gingerly oil merchant is the channel for that investment, he has a much closer eye on what the farmer is doing and what the return is, the volumes of seed, the volume of oil. And the examples that are going on, VSS is the company who is doing the toddy and jaggery and spices. So VSS is run by this guy who's come back from Toronto. His name is Sugandhan Shanmuganathan. He went to Toronto during the war when he was a teenager, had a career there for 20, 25 years, became a senior manager in a company in Canada. And he moved back, I think, 2014, so the year before I came back. And when he came back, he had no intention of doing work, but he got bored. So he looked around for something to spend his time on, and found that these Arak cooperatives were in trouble. We started working with them. Shakti Agro is by another Jaffna guy who again left during the early stages of the war. He initially went to Norway, and then he ended up in New York. So his name is Raj Jana. And in New York, he set up a tech company in Wall Street, which was doing very well. He sold it, and he came back. He had some land near Yakachi, which his father had bought him when he was a boy, 40 acres. And he started this cocoa peat venture. He doesn't grow, so what cocoa peat is, in case any of you don't know, it's the dust from the husk of the coconut. So the coconut farmer currently gets paid for the nut, and he gets paid a little bit for the coir. But previously, nobody was interested in the dust. Now, Janan takes the dust, makes it into a cocoa peat, which is a growing medium, and he's exporting it to North America. Mulai is a milk processing company in Mullaitivu. They don't export, they sell inside Sri Lanka. He buys milk, so he's from London, this guy. He buys milk from local farmers and he processes it to yogurt and curd and drinking yogurts. So these follow the investment model that I see here. Mulai would invest in the farmers for a better breed of cow, more cows. So basically, that's the model that I'm suggesting here. Other areas that are a huge opportunity in the north. In the north, we have an enormous coastline, and the coastal waters are remarkably smooth. I've been there very often. It's a perfect area for offshore aquaculture. So example is, this is something, I met someone from NACTA. NACTA is the National Aquatic Development Authority or something like that. This is the float for caged fish or sea bass. So from here you would have a net hanging underneath, and the sea bass would be put inside here. There'd be hundreds of sea bass. You basically feed them. These things are floating out to the sea, so there's nothing much you need to worry about. You can have 50 of these in an acre of sea. So the government leases out the sea for about 100,000 rupees an acre per year. Another great opportunity is sea cucumber. So I visited a place quite close by to where I'm in Jaffna, where they have a sea cucumber nursery. So they produce the baby sea cucumber, and then they sell these to local fishermen. Fishermen have areas in the sea which they net off, put these sea cucumber in, and they grow them until they're large. And there is a huge market for sea cucumber in China and in the Far East. These are very, like I think $100 a kilogram. So the company that has the sea cucumber nursery will buy back the grown sea cucumber. So there are projects like this that can be invested in. Now, this is my last slide, because I'm 5 minutes over. When I first came here, I went and met the director of one of the biggest companies in Sri Lanka, which is controlled by Tamils, as several of them are. And I asked him, and they've done nothing in the north. And I asked him, why have you not done any investments, anything in the north? And he said to me, because they're easier places to make money. He said that they have their factories in the south, they're closer to Colombo, they're taking raw materials out, bringing finished goods back to export. managing the Sinhalese with Sinhalese-speaking managers is so much easier. You can't justify going to the north. So if your priority is actually making money, then the north isn't the right place. North will be the right place one day. But that'll only happen, as I've said here, so I'll read off what I've said. The north needs profit-driven investors who want to make the north rich more than they want to make themselves rich. So they'll generate profit, some of which they can take, but they won't be looking to generate the biggest profit they possibly can. They'll be looking to generate profit in the north so that the north can grow and evolve into a prosperous society for the benefit of the north and for the benefit of the country. So thank you.